This ledge we're on looks sort of precarious, is it?
Just mildly, yeah. If you look right behind you, if you'll drop down, you see this little scarp right here.
Earthquakes are continuing on the mountain. We can't tell how strong they are, but they've opened up deep cracks only about 5 feet from the edge of the volcano.
Mount St. Helens has experienced a devastating increase in earthquake activity over the years. Painfully, there are rumors that the mountain is on the verge of eruption after 44 years. Is there any truth in this? And what are the scientists saying about this? Let's find out. Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is one of the most active stratovolcanoes known for its disastrous volcanic eruptions. The mount is also known as Lawet Latala to the local Cowlitz people. For the Klickitat, the mount is known as Lowit or Luwala Clough. It is located in Skamania County, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. Mount St. Helens' English name has an interesting history. Do you want to find out? Keep on watching. The name Helens was derived from the British diplomat Alan Fitzherbert, 1st Baron St. Helens. He happened also to be a friend of explorer George Vancouver, who surveyed the area in the late 18th century. Mount St. Helens lies 53 miles northeast of Portland, Oregon, and 98 miles south of Seattle. It is also 34 miles west of Mount Adams, which is in the western part of the Cascade Range. Due to their proximity, the two mountains are considered brother and sister. Additionally, the two volcanoes are approximately 50 miles from Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier is the highest of the Cascade volcanoes. Added to the list of the Cascade volcanoes is Mount Hood. Mount Hood, on the other hand, is the nearest major volcanic peak in Oregon, which is 60 miles southeast of Mount St. Helens. All these mountains were considered one big family. However, in this family of Cascade volcanoes, Mount St. Helens is geologically young compared with the other major Cascade volcanoes. Its eruptions were not like others. We will soon explore that. However, let's explore the different access routes to Mount St. Helens. Although the mountain is located in Skamania County, Washington, the access routes to the mountain run through Cowlitz County to the west, and it runs through Lewis County to the north. In addition to this, the State Route 504, locally known as the Spirit Lake Memorial Highway, connects with Interstate 5 at Exit 49. This is just 34 miles to the west of the mountain. The North-South Highway skirts the low-lying cities of Castle Rock, Longview, and Kelso along the Cowlitz River. This route passes through Vancouver, Washington, and then to Portland, Oregon. The metropolitan area is less than 50 miles to the southwest. The community nearest the volcano, Baum, is Cougar, Washington, located in the Lewis River Valley, approximately 11 miles southwest of the peak. Also, the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest surrounds Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is making headlines due to scientists' numerous discoveries about a possible eruption. Is there any cause for alarm? Of course there is. After the last eruption, the possibility of another eruption is scary. What happened at the last eruption? Let's find out. The 1980 eruption. It was a deadly volcanic eruption in 1980, which sent shivers down the spines of people whenever they heard or remembered Mount St. Helens. On March 27, 1980, a series of volcanic explosions and pyroclastic flows unexpectedly began at Mount St. Helens in Skamania County, Washington, United States. There were reports that on that day, a series of phreatic blasts had occurred. These blasts started from the summit and it escalated. At exactly 8:32 a.m. on May 18, 1980, a major explosive eruption happened. The eruption occurred so rapidly that it resulted in a volcanic explosivity index of 5. There were reports that this was the first to occur in the contiguous United States since the much smaller 1915 eruption of Lassen Peak in California. To date, the 1980 eruption has remained the most disastrous volcanic eruption in U.S. history. Why? The eruption claimed about 57 people's lives. That includes the innkeeper and World War I veteran, Harry R. Truman. Also, the photographers Reed Blackburn and Robert Landsberg lost their lives.
Now, there's a very great hazard due to the fact that the glacier is breaking up on this side of the volcano.
Painfully, the renowned volcanologist David A. Johnston died in the process. It was a huge loss to everyone. Additionally, hundreds of square miles were reduced to wasteland, resulting in over $1 billion in damages. When recalculated in 2023, the loss was equivalent to $3.4 billion. Thousands of animals died. It was similar to a massacre. Also, Mount St. Helens was left with a crater on its north side. There were records that at the time of the eruption, the summit of the volcano was owned by the Burlington Northern Railroad. Later, the railroad donated its land to the United States Forest Service. The area was later preserved in the Mount St. Helens National Volcanic Monument. The disaster was an understatement of what happened that month. Later, due to the eruption, the state recognized the month of May as Volcanic Awareness Month. The month was commemorated, and numerous events were held at Mount St. Helens to raise awareness about the dangers associated with the volcano. Additionally, people within the region came together to discuss the eruptions and safety concerns, and also gathered to commemorate the many lives lost during the natural disaster. The question many ask is if there were no signs before the eruption started. Let's get our answers too. Was this a sudden disaster or not? In the 1840s and 1850s, Mount St. Helens remained dormant. However, in March 1980, few activities were building up on the mountain. For instance, on March 15th, many scientists revealed that several small earthquakes were building up. They reported that it was possible that magma might have begun moving beneath the volcano. Later, on March 20th at 3:45 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, a shallow magnitude 4.2 earthquake centered below the volcano's north flank. Why didn't they raise an alarm then? Well, they were scientists and needed to observe before concluding. However, the volcano's north flank reportedly signaled the volcano's return from 123 years of hibernation. Later, on March 25th, the scientists reported a gradually building earthquake. The earthquake swarm saturated the area's seismographs, and it began to intensify around noon. 2 days later, the earthquake had reached its peak levels, including one registering 5.1 on the Richter scale. Also, a total of 174 shocks of magnitude 2.6 or greater were recorded during those 2 days. Unfortunately, the magnitude only intensified. During April and May, the magnitude of the shocks became 3.2. Other reports showed that it was greater than 3.2. The greater the magnitude, the higher the risks. Unfortunately, the scientists did not see a direct sign of an eruption. What they picked was small, earthquake-induced avalanches of snow and ice. These were reported from their aerial observations. Later, at exactly 12:36 p.m. on March 26th, phreatic eruptions occurred. There were reports that these phreatic eruptions were caused by steam explosions resulting from magma heating the groundwater. Not only did these phreatic eruptions eject material, but they also shattered the rock within the old summit crater. This led to the excavation of a new crater, which is 250 feet wide. This sent an ash column about 7,000 feet into the air. All these observations, along with many more, eventually led to a massive eruption that claimed lives. This has prompted scientists to take note of every detail to prevent another disaster. Now, there are reports that Mount St. Helens may be going through a recharging process. Let's see their findings. A disaster in the making. Mount St. Helens has made headlines again. There are reports that the 1980 eruption episode may repeat itself. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Mount St. Helens has been showing different signs of seismic activity lately. This is reportedly part of the volcano's natural process of recharging its magma. Scientists also discovered an alarming increase in the number of earthquakes. At the beginning of February 2024, there were 350 earthquakes, and just within a week in June 2024, they reported 38 earthquakes. Is another disaster coming? Like the first eruption, these earthquakes were not obvious. However, one of the earthquakes registered a 2.0 magnitude on May 31st last year. The magnitude was so strong that humans could have felt it. Aside from this, more than 95% of the other earthquakes have been less than magnitude 1.0, which makes them too small to be felt. Mount St. Helens is well known for its unusual earthquakes. However, since the last eruption in 2008, there have been reports that the recent seismic activity represents the largest short-term increase in earthquakes in recorded history. Although there were records of similar seismic activity that did not lead to eruptions, specifically from 1908 to 992, 1995 to 996, and 1997 to 1999, the scientists recognized the need to document all these events. However, according to the USGS's Cascades Volcano Observatory in Vancouver, Washington, more earthquakes do not guarantee an eruption. However, scientists saw the small earthquakes as a recharge process where magma builds up beneath the volcano. Let's hear the full report the USGS gave about the observations. Magma slowly rises through the lower crust and accumulates in a reservoir about 2.5 to 6 miles, which is 4 to 10 kilometers below sea level. Recharge events can occur when magma enters this upper reservoir and increases stresses that lead to earthquakes. In addition to this, they reported that there were no other signs of an impending eruption, at least none that were obvious. They added that signs like ground deformation, volcanic gas, and thermal emission are still missing after careful observations. There is more. Keep on watching. In a bid to calm the people, the observatory wrote, "High rates of seismicity, interpreted as recharge, have been observed in the past at Mount St. Helens, and other volcanoes can continue for many years without an eruption. No significant changes have been observed in other monitoring parameters, and there is no change in alert levels at this time. Mount St. Helens remains at normal, regardless of background levels of activity." Also, the observatory and scientists have engaged a new technique that analyzes seismic signals. After the first disaster, they saw the need to predict days in advance when America's most dangerous volcano would erupt. How amazing! Well, the eruption in May 1989 was a wake-up call for them. They saw the threat of volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest. It also became a defining moment in the global movement to better monitor volcanoes. After the disaster, the efforts, resources, and time spent on observing volcanoes, especially at Mount St. Helens, have increased significantly. Also, the blast zone became an experimental ground for scientists. They turned it into an outdoor laboratory where they studied nature's regeneration. Additionally, the ash that blew towards the east over the Yakima Valley and Palouse provided researchers such as Mac with sufficient material to experiment with. Mac said, "It wasn't research that I intended to do, but there was a unique opportunity, and it would be remiss of me to ignore it." Talking about their experience, many scientists have opened up. One of them is volcanologist Don Swanson, who is also a founding member of the Cascades Volcano Observatory in Vancouver. He said, "I think we are in a much better position to monitor Cascade volcanoes than we ever have been, and it goes back to Mount St. Helens in 1980. For him, it was a painful eye-opener. He added, "That was a turning point. From a tragedy, you learn a lot, which can help mitigate problems down the road." Existing observatories got increased funding, and people learned how to respond. We're always improving how we respond, but this was a major step. Volcanoes are now more closely monitored. We have a good chance now of determining when a volcano becomes restless. A lahar detection and warning systems have been set up on several rivers draining Mount Rainier, and public awareness is much greater than it was in 1980. All of this will save thousands of lives, maybe tens of thousands of lives. What do you think about the scientists' observations? Do you think another volcanic eruption is about to happen? Thanks for watching this video. While you're still here, check out the other videos you see on your screen.